But sometimes my critics actually lay before me a gem and a jewel. In the course of their attempting to criticize me, they actually teach me what I need to change my thinking upon. I'll give you the example I have in mind. This one critic was saying, well, you keep talking about electrical reactance as the source of free energy, yet reactive power... No, excuse me. You keep talking about reactive power as a source of free energy, yet reactive power is not power. It's like a contradiction of terms because it's not power. It's imaginary. It doesn't exist in the real world, and we have no proof that it exists at all in any world or any existence because it's not physical, it's not real, it's imaginary. It's predicated on the square root of negative numbers. And that woke me up to a very important way to talk about this is to never again try to avoid the use of power when talking about electrical reactance, because it's not power. It's a form of potentiality. So it's funny that when you think about it, electrical engineering or electrodynamic theory reserves the word of potential in terms of common usage, mostly pertaining to voltage, as if that's the only potential in the existence within the field of electrodynamic theory. And it's not. It's not the only potential. There's time, there's frequency, there's phase relation, there's capacitance, there's inductance, and the reactances thereby. There's a lot of different potentialities, all from which can be produced eventually through multi-step process, the kinetic energy of free energy. But it has to come from potentialities to do so. It can't come from energy. You're not going to get it. See, that's the trick of the question. Where does free energy come from? It comes from various potentialities working in concert as a multi-orchestrated affair of different factors working together to create the desired goal, which is you want free energy. So you're not getting it from somewhere because potentialities don't exist in some place. These are just concepts that we use to help us handle the situation, but being concepts doesn't make them real. It just helps us deal with it. So a concept is not reality, even though it acts as a tool to manifest something into reality, namely the free energy, the kinetic energy that we wish to manifest for free by augmenting what little is available. And this expression or phrase, concept, a human concept is a tool to help us manifest free energy from a bunch of potentialities that don't exist in our physical world. It has a consequence. And the consequence is we don't give ourselves credit for what we are attempting to do when we play around with electricity. We are playing to be God. We are playing to be our own creator. Manifest, especially on the topic of free energy, more so than anything else, manifesting something that's not there. Taking a microvolt from the environment and the total wattage is nano or less, more like nano to pico wattage, and then creating 100,000 watts to power an EV without any batteries, such as the Amman brothers claimed to do 100 years ago, 101 years ago, actually, to this year. We are playing God. We are playing a creator. And maybe that sounds like an egomaniacal way to think that we don't deserve it, but see, we do deserve it. Didn't Christ say such things? You know, you can't help but wonder the lack of religious precepts within the field of science, owing to the fact that it's predicated on Malthusian mentality, that we have limited resources and we're going to lead to overpopulation and drain the planet. Well, we might fry the planet, that's true. If with so much energy zipping around, it could happen, and explode it. It could happen, but we can't drain it. That's because we don't need to drain it. Why drain when you don't have to? Why depend on daddy And, oh, God, Daddy's so severe, he doesn't want to give me $100 a second allowance so I can spend $100 per second. Well, I could go become a stock trader and make more than that per second, or whatever they make. I don't know. Bypass Daddy. It took me half a year to figure that out on how to start TM. Bypass Mom. She's against me. Yeah, but my stepdad doesn't care. He'll sign the parental release form. Oh, I have two parents. What do you know? It comes in handy. So you bypass the problem. You do a quarterback end run. And that's the whole point of thinking, that I had to learn to train myself to think this way. Don't attack the problem, go around it. Isn't that how Aikido or Aikido, Hapkido, or whatever it's called, martial arts, the northern Japanese version of martial arts? You don't confront your attacker, you go around him. You rotate, and the guy lunges for you and ends up with his face in the dirt because, you're not there anymore. So you avoid the problem by going, and this is what Maharishi taught when he taught TM, that the solution to problems is not in the problem, or else it would not be a problem anymore if the solution was in the problem. It would have been solved by now. You have to go outside the problem and bring in that third element. So when you've got a darkened room and you can't see, you turn on the light. Well, but the light wasn't there. That's right. But you got to go fetch it from the light switch to convey the light so that you can see. So the solution is not in the problem, and unfortunately, you have to be egregious in order to solve it. There is no other way. And that was my critic for taking my Wikibook off of Wikibooks. I was being egregious about what I was doing. And yet that is the solution. You have to think outside the herd, outside of the herd mentality if you're going to solve anything. Anything. Or else this herd would have solved it by now and it wouldn't be a problem. Duh. Come on. Think through what you're saying. But in dealing with this concept of free energy, it's beyond merely solving problems outside of the herd common sensibility of common sense. It's becoming a god. It's becoming a creator. And we don't give ourselves enough credit for why we are humans in the first place. And we're not capable of understanding why we became humans. It wasn't to become maniacally like a Hitler who does what a person who does things at the cost of other people. The whole point of free energy is not to steal from the grid. Well, but the grid's there, unfortunately, and it gets in the way because I'm trying to steal from my environment. It's like the guy, who was it? Was it Archimedes or, I don't know, some ancient Greek dude was sunbathing, and a guy came to talk to him and created a shadow and put the fellow who was sunbathing in shade. And he said, excuse me, we can have this conversation if you step aside. You're getting in the way of my sunbath. So this is the problem with the presence of the grid, is that, it may be that our free energy circuit will steal from the grid because there's more energy available there than there is in the background voltage gradient of the environment. Or else plants would have been fried, right? They would have been scorched to death. So we have insulators, and we have the the transmission line elevated above ground, so you don't go and touch it. God forbid. Well, I guess birds don't have a problem, but they don't straddle both lines. Like all those movies where the electrical potential is distributed between the two tracks of an electric train rather than up above. It's down in the tracks, and down in the subway station, the guy falls across both tracks and electrocutes himself because he shorts out both tracks through his body. Oops. Anywho, so it might be hard for people to digest the import of, well, what if it were true, this free energy business? Then it would make us into gods. Because in that position of manifesting a greater degree of wattage than what's available in the background of our environment from the available voltage that is there, and utilizing the intelligence of a free energy circuit to make that happen, it might be too much for most people to handle, and it might scare them. In fact, I remember scaring somebody at a forum And the administrator, the moderator, came in very quickly and shut things down because that guy was getting terrified because he actually began to think that what I was saying just might be true. Oh my God. It was so devastating to him. It was shaking him in his boots. And rather than go through that trauma, the moderator was compassionate and shut me down, shut down the message thread. And so I got a very important lesson. A psychiatrist or whatnot can be sued if they put a patient through therapy that's too drastic for the patient to handle and becomes traumatized in addition to whatever trauma they already had. Now they have more trauma because the therapy was too intrusive, too sudden, too abrupt, get to the goal too quickly, and then they couldn't handle it. In fact, Charlie Lutz used to tell this story, how he helped out a woman who came to his lecture sitting in the front row, grief-stricken over the loss of her son, who had just recently passed away. She was overwhelmed with grief, and Charlie thought to himself, well, I think I'll do this gal a favor and take away her grief. Well, that gal got so terrified that her grief had suddenly disappeared that he realized, never again shall I do that. I will simply talk, and I won't even talk directly to people to explain the solutions to things like the way I try to do, at least conceptually. He just spoke through metaphor and let you try to figure out what he was talking about. Because you had to take responsibility to own the knowledge. And that's what I mean by putting in so much time, is that I own it. I started out with a belief in my heart there was something wrong with the way electric cars, a RAV4 EV a Toyota RAV4 EV from 2002 takes 5 to 6 hours to recharge after spending a mere hour on the freeway driving at freeway speeds. That's ridiculous. Why would any consumer want to buy that? Well, I did because I knew I had to commit myself somehow. And so, okay, now I'm committed. Sort of. So long as the car ran, I really wasn't. I just kept driving it. But then when the battery pack became non-rechargeable due to circumstances I won't get into, now I got a 3,000-pound paperweight that I hold on to because all of its iron content, not because it has a 1,100-pound battery pack, a nickel metal hydride battery pack. That part is dead weight. But the rest of the vehicle, all of the iron, whatever is magnetically coupled to each other, that's a tremendous potentiality sitting there, waiting to be utilized. Modern day cars like Tesla Motors is an aluminum or what do you call it, a matrix, a compositional matrix. I mean, even transformer cores, AC transformer cores are not solid iron anymore. They're a matrix, so you can't do a perpetual motion holder, Ed Leedskalnin perpetual motion holder experiment because there's no magnetic remnants possible anymore in the core of an AC transformer. So, but there probably is in my car. I know it is on the shell because all I have to do is take a refrigerator magnet and see if it sticks. So at least there's a magnetic remnants within the shell surrounding my dead electric car. So anyway, if you can't wrap your mind around becoming a creator, then really there is nothing I can say to help you because I'm outside of your territory and maybe I should stay that way, for your sake, for your sanity. For the sake of your sanity, maybe you should not believe a word I say, for your own good.